with what can we expect, some realistic expectations for Manchester United entering the season. Obviously, we know Manchester United were coming off a terrific end to last season in the fact that they won the FA Cup in their last game of the season. But overall, through the majority of their season, they're coming off a very, very disappointing season. There was big question marks on whether or not Erik Ten Hag will stay on as manager. Not that he was leaving, but there was a lot of rumors that he could potentially be fired, and it was very, very interesting in the fact that it took Manchester United a very, very long time to come to the conclusion that they wanted to stay with him. They also, I believe, they did a whole end the season review, and they also in that time were rumored to contact some other managers, and it was clear that it was a very difficult decision that they came to, but they eventually they came to the decision, and they stayed on with Erik Ten Hag through this following season, diminished certain aspects of his role that he had amongst the team, as it was expected. Some of the transfers that he wanted didn't really go through like he would expect, specifically talking about the players of Amrabat, Mason Mount, Anthony. That was the big one, Anthony. So it was clear that there was an issue there, and it's an interesting point of view United find themselves in right now, perspective. Because United, it's always, there's always a recycle that they've been in since Ferguson left so many years ago. It's always been a new cycle, and each new and upcoming year, it seems like the cycle there's a new restart to the cycle every couple of years, and they're never able to take that next level. They go through 3-4 different reboots since Sir Alex Ferguson, and none of them seem to work. None of them seem to get to that next point. It didn't work under Sir Alex Ferguson, David Moyes, Jose Mourinho. There was a little bit good signs at the beginning, but we know how that ended up. And then Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was another cycle, and then that restarted. And then now Ten Hag was another cycle, and it came off to start it off a good start, and they go all the way back down. Now, injuries has a lot to do with it. Man, they suffered a lot from injuries in crucial positions, especially the center half position. There was times that they were playing Casemiro as center back next to Johnny Evans that's already not just old, but he was injured too. There was situations where they were playing unfit center backs like Johnny Evans alongside Casemiro because they just were desperate. They had no options. Injuries hit them left and right. A really, really bad injury bug. There's no two ways about it. But the performances were really, really bad. Even despite those injuries, the performances in certain games were really, really bad, and they had no identity, no style of play. We see the free-flowing type of football that Ajax played under Erik Ten Hag, and you don't see any of that at Manchester United. You see a very boring, dull team to watch that lack any cutting edge and that lack any run as to stay in form. Like, I remember the Chelsea game where they dominated it in and out and created so many chances. But apart from that, there was not much performances like that. They struggled against teams that, played a lower block. They struggled with the creativity of being able to break them down. And then with the better teams, they just struggled to keep up with them quality-wise. The other teams just used their quality better than them when it came to the better teams, the Manchester Cities, the Liverpools, and all that. And it was poor to watch. Their Champions League campaign, extremely poor in the fact that, look, you can't get out of a group with Galatasaray in Copenhagen. Yes, I understand Bayern Munich. That's a difficult team. That's a difficult opponent. Even though that was a weaker Bayern team. Let's just be real. But I understand. More difficult opponent. Okay. But you still find yourself in a place that you're only needing to beat Galatasaray in Copenhagen. You know, these are teams that Manchester United, they have more quality than those two. There's no arguing it. Even with the injury bug that they went to, in terms of quality, United has more quality than these two teams. And there's no excuse for Erik ten Hag for not being able to get to that group stage. In fact, Copenhagen will find themselves in a position that they could have made it easier for them. They ended up missing a penalty at Old Trafford that could have gave them the win. In the Old Trafford game, I mean, Man United, in their Champions League campaign, they were a disgrace. They really were a disgrace, and they deservedly were knocked out of the Champions League because they didn't perform to the level. The quality was not there. They went to Galatasaray, and the pressure got to the players, and they didn't perform anywhere near on the pitch. They made rash mistakes. Rashford had got a rash red card, and it was just individual moments of just bad moments, and again, it got to them. And then Erik ten Hag, always making excuses after the game. Not even just in the Champions League campaign. I'm talking about throughout the season, discussing refereeing mistakes, talking about how their performance wasn't that bad, the result was worse. It's just excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse, and it was really frustrating, not just for me, but a Manchester United fan to see. But they do have that caveat of, despite that horrible season and some low moments throughout the season, there's the caveat that they finished the season remarkably in winning the FA Cup final and beating Manchester City to do it, and taking away a title from them and giving it to them. And also, that win also put them in the FA Cup, which is another opportunity for them that they'll have this season to reach the Champions League if they're not able to do it through the league campaign. And they actually stripped away Chelsea's opportunity to have that to have that backup to reach the Champions League, because Chelsea were going to make the Europa League as the 6th place team, but if the FA Cup winner is not one of those Champions League or Europa League spots, you take away that 6th place Europa League spot and you give it away to the the FA Cup winner. And that happened to me, Manchester United. It's unfortunate for Chelsea, but it's how it works. You get rewarded for winning titles, and that's what happened. So United, it was a good end or a good final game to the season. Not a good end, but it was a good final end to the season, and that's a big win for them. And it allows them to enter in this Premier League season with a little bit of confidence on the back of beating an FA Cup winner. You got players now that have won the trophy, but again, Marcus Rashford, that's going to be a main determining factor on how United play. Marcus Rashford has his dips and have his downs, and they kind of follow the way Manchester United are doing. When Manchester United are at their best, Marcus Rashford is at his best, scoring goals and just being a dominant player. When Manchester United is, bad, Marcus Rashford goes down with them, and he's had a horrible season. He had a great first season at United for Ten Hag, scoring goals left and right, just being a dominant weaker throughout the season. The second season, he's an absolute disgrace. He was a disgrace, and he has these up and downs and up and downs and up and downs that he's had his entire career. So that's a bigger discussion to have with Marcus Rashford, and the fact that he's just an inconsistent player. But the way the law works, the way his career has gone so far, it's bound for this season to be a successful one for Marcus Rashford. And if he's able to be that dominant winger that he can be when he's confident, then that'll be a big factor for Ten Hag, for United. It allows them to attack in multiple different ways. And Marcus Rashford, when he is confident, he's a quality player. It's hard to stop him running at the defense. He's vertical. He has a good nature around goal. He's a brilliant finisher. He has that poacher. He's kind of like a poacher. He's always at the right places at the right times when he's like on form. But when he's not on form, he looks like a shell of himself. He's unconfident. Even his passes, the way his passes come off, just look unconfident, and he's a really bad player, and he whenever he's not in form. So that is going to have a lot to determine with how United do. I think overall, in general, I think the injuries, all these injuries, if they're able to go down next season, I think that'll help Ten Hag. And They need to find a way to build off the momentum that they had that first season. Get back to what they were doing that first season under Erik Ten Hag. Some of those players that were having a brilliant season in Ten Hag's first season, like Casemiro, like Lisandro Martinez, who was, the only reason why he didn't have a brilliant season this season round is because he was injured. But those sort of players, they need to get back to it. And you always think you're way farther than what it is. I think, the likes of Lisandro Martinez coming back and either Casemiro or Rashford, getting back to their first season Erik Ten Hag form. I think those little things can make a big difference because you're never really as far as you think. So I think United will have a slightly better season than they did last season. But I think there's still a mentality issue with some of these players. There is. Like Bruno Fernandes, his whinging, his whining, his crying. That's still an issue that Manchester United have, and I don't think this is a United team that have anywhere near the quality or ability to compete with the likes of Manchester City. They'll be nowhere near that title race. But I think they'll have a steady progression from last season. I mean, they're bound to. I mean, you can't get much worse from last season and with the players coming back. But yeah, I think realistic expectation for them is to make the top four. That's what I said for Chelsea last season. You want progression and you want to be in the Champions League. I think with the squad that United have right now, Champions League is a realistic expectation. But you're not really expecting far much other than that. You're really not.